It's a warm and sunny summer's morning in Chama, New Mexico, as the sights, sounds, and smells of steam fill the air in a scene that's been repeated hundreds of times for nearly the last century and a half. We're on what was once part of the Denver and Rio Grande Western narrow gauge system, which at its peak ran from Alamosa, Colorado to Durango, with a number of sprawling branch lines along the way going to places like Farmington, Gunnison, and Silverton. When the Rio Grande moved to abandon the narrow gauge right-of-way in 1971, the states of Colorado and New Mexico stepped in to buy the 64-mile stretch of track between Antonito, Colorado and Chama, New Mexico to form what is now known as the Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the railroad's operations between Chama, New Mexico and Osier, Colorado, the halfway point of the railroad. If one were to take a quick look around the yard in Chama, they'd find a number of historic pieces of equipment such as K37 number 492, diesel switcher number 15, and steam locomotive number 315, which was masquerading as Denver and Rio Grande number 425 during the time of our visit. Number 315 is a 280 consolidation built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works in 1895 for the Florence and Cripple Creek Railroad. It would eventually be sold to the Denver and Rio Grande Western and would serve the railroad until 1949 when it was retired and placed on display in a park in Durango, Colorado. Between 1998 and 2007, the engine was restored to operation and now continuously visits both the Durango and Silverton in Durango, Colorado, and the Cumbres and Toltec. Today, it is on the Cumbres and Toltec to help celebrate their 50th anniversary. Here we see the crew of 484 preparing her for the day's run, as they clean her fire over the ash pits. Once this is completed, they'll move her to the other end of the yard where she'll take on water for the day. Once 484 is out of the way, engine 487 moves over the ash pit to complete the same process. With the 484 topped off with water, it then moves ahead of the water tank to have its boiler blown down, and clear it of any sludge or sediment that may have built up overnight. With the boiler cleaned out and our water supply topped off, the 484 backs past the old freight house and switches onto another track to be topped off with coal. While the large coaling tower is still operational, it is only used for demonstrational purposes today. With its coal and water supply now both topped off, the 484 backs away to make room for the 487 to top off with coal. .484 and 487 are a pair of 282 Mikados built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works in 1925 for the Denver and Rio Grande. These locomotives are designated as Class K36 and are considered to be one of the best classes of steam locomotives to be preserved today. Of the original 10 that were built, 9 of which survive today and 8 of them are still in operation. With the consist assembled and the engines attached, the train is now fully pulled together and is ready to depart for the 4% climb to Cumbres Pass. In only a few short miles, the train will have climbed up to 3,000 feet in elevation once it reaches the summit. As we leave the yard, you can see a number of old wooden freight cars that are also kept around and maintained for the purpose of photo specials. These freight cars are maintained by the Friends of the Cumbres and Toltec. The Friends of the Cumbres and Toltec is an all-volunteer group dedicated to ensuring that much of the line stays as historically accurate as possible. As we leave the Chama yard, one of the crew members accidentally dumps all the air for the train, causing it to go into emergency, and puts the train several minutes behind schedule. While the train is stopped, the shop crew, who stepped outside to see the train leave town, begin cracking jokes and making fun of the crew for the error. With the issue resolved, the train now departs the Chama yard and makes its way into the aspen tree-filled woods before crossing the Rio Chama, and then crossing Highway 17 for the first of many times on this trip. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the view as we begin climbing the 4% grade to Cumbres Pass. The train is now mated to Lobato Trestle. On a normal day, the train would be able to cross the bridge no problem. However, on the day we rode the train, 484 and 487 were double heading up the hill due to the excessive length of the train. Because of this, weight restrictions have been placed on the bridge when two engines are working up the hill. As such, 487 is already uncoupled and ran across the bridge on her own, and now 484 is bringing the rest of the train across to couple back up with her on the other end.
Okay, we get over the trestle. We will be 100 feet above Wolf Creek. It's 310 feet long. Iron trestle built 1883.
With the two engines safely across and coupled back together, the train can finally finish crossing Lobato Trestle. Now, let's spend some time in the open-air car and enjoy the sights and sounds of the train from both on board and on the ground as it works its way up the grade and through a private hunting reserve.
get good pictures on the way back too, I promise.
At just over 10,000 feet above sea level, we have reached the summit at Cumbres Pass. In addition to the daily tourist trains, the Cumbres and Toltec also offers a school for aspiring engineer and firemen to learn the ropes of what it takes to operate a steam locomotive. Here we see the special consist for that school reaching the summit, headed up by 487. As you can see behind it, the consist consists of those wooden passenger cars we saw as we left the yard in Chama earlier. At the summit, most trains, this one included, stop for water to top off before heading downhill to Osier and Antonito. Later, we see that the tourist train has also reached the summit. Here, we see that this train is a bit different, in that it turns around on the Y and then tops off with water before heading back down the hill, as this is the half-day trip that only runs on Fridays. On most normal days, the helper, if there is one at all, will be cut off here and sent back down the hill to Chama. Back to the regular all-day train, though, shortly after the summit at Cumbres Pass, the train is pitched in a Tanglefoot curve. Large horseshoe-like curves like this were used frequently on mountain railroads to help trains gain or lose elevation without encountering too steep of a grade. At one point on this curve, the tracks nearly double back on each other. It is said that Tanglefoot Curve got its name after a show-offy brakeman tried to do tricks and jumps between cars while setting the brakes on a downhill freight train. However, he fell off the train and his feet got caught between the wheels. Thankfully, the only thing that was hurt was his pride, as many crews afterwards called him Tanglefoot and started addressing this curve as Tanglefoot Curve. Unfortunately for the brakeman, the name stuck, and he was never able to live it down. As one can probably tell, due to its nature, Tanglefoot Curve has become a popular photo spot for both those riding the train and those that are following the train trackside. As it rounds the curve, many passengers clamber to the left side of the train so that they may get a good view of the engine as it pulls them along the curve at a gentle pace. It is also here that the engine crew starts putting the brakes to good use, as the route from here on out is all downhill. In addition to this onboard view we have of 484 rounding Tanglefoot Curve, we also have a trackside view of engine 487 rounding Tanglefoot Curve earlier in the day with the engineer and fireman school train that we saw earlier. And now, from here on out, we go back on board the all-day train and enjoy the view as it makes its way to Osier. The train has now arrived in Osier, Colorado, the halfway point of the railroad, where passengers will be allowed to get off and eat lunch. It is also here that the train from Chama and the train from Antonito meet together. In a normal year, passengers would be able to either change trains and continue on to Antonito, Colorado at the other end of the line, or board the same train and return to their point of origin in Chama. However, due to ongoing concerns from the coronavirus pandemic, this was not an option for passengers at the time of our visit. In addition, both trains are turned on a nearby loop, whereas in a normal year, each train would run the full length of the route. It is also around this time where the helper from earlier that was cut off at the summit returns to Chama. After a nice lunch consisting of turkey, mashed potatoes, biscuits, and more, passengers have reboarded the train and are ready for the return trip to Chama. We will once again be enjoying the view from on board the train as it works its way back up the Los Pinos River Valley. Just before exiting the Los Pinos River Valley, the train makes another stop for water before continuing up the hill back to the summit. As the train gets back underway, let's enjoy some mostly trackside views as the train works its way back into Chama. As the train reaches the summit once again, it makes one more stop, this time to let off passengers that got on here earlier in the day. Shortly after departing the summit one final time, the train will round Windy Point, where the railroad clings to the mountainside hundreds of feet above the nearby highway.
Go. Hey, Joe. See the train up there?
As the train once again rolls deep into the woods, the train will roll out its final miles into Chama. As the train pulls back into Chama, this marks the end of our round-trip journey on the Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad, and it also marks the end of the video. Thanks for watching.